Close your eyes and let the weight of your body sink into the bed. Imagine that the walls around you are fading away, replaced by the vast, cool air of an ancient world. We are traveling back, far beyond the reach of memory, to a time when the heart of Europe was a silent, pulsing wilderness. This is the beginning of Bohemia. Before the first crown was forged, before the first word of the Czech language was spoken, there was only the land. Imagine a bird's-eye view of the European continent. In the very center, there is a natural fortress, a great diamond-shaped basin ringed by 4 mountain ranges. To the southwest, the Šumava, the great Bohemian forest, where the trees are so thick they swallow the light of the sun. To the northwest, the Ore Mountains, veins of silver and tin sleeping deep beneath the granite. To the northeast, the giant mountains, the Krkonoše, where the peaks touch the clouds. And to the southeast, the gentle Bohemian Moravian highlands. This is the Bohemian Massif. It is one of the oldest geological formations in the world. Feel the age of the stone beneath you. It is stable. It is unmoving. For millions of years, this land sat in silence, collecting the rains and the snows. Imagine the slow, rhythmic cycle of the ice ages. Great glaciers creeping down from the north, stopping just at the edge of the mountains, then retreating, leaving behind a soil so rich and black it feels like velvet between your fingers. Now focus on the water. In the southern heights of the Šumava, where the moss is thick and emerald green, a single drop of water falls from a pine needle. It joins another and another. This is the birth of the Vltava. In its infancy, it is a cold, clear stream, singing over pebbles that have been smoothed by the friction of eons. Listen to the sound of the water. It is a constant, low-frequency hum, the white noise of the earth. As the Vltava flows north, it gathers strength. It carves its way through the Devil's Wall, a gorge of massive boulders. Imagine the river as a silver thread weaving through a tapestry of endless green. This river is the spine of our story. It carries the meltwater of the mountains down into the warm, fertile basin of the center. As the climate warmed, the forest took hold. This was a primeval forest, an Urwald. There were oaks here that lived for 1,000 years, their roots reaching deep into the dark earth, their branches interlocking to create a canopy so dense that the forest floor remained in a perpetual cool twilight. Imagine the scent of this forest, the sharp tang of pine, the sweet decay of autumn leaves, and the cold, metallic smell of wet stone. In this silence, the first animals moved. The European bison, heavy and slow, crashing through the undergrowth. The lynx with its tufted ears watching from the high branches. The brown bear sleeping in the limestone caves of the Bohemian karst. The world was in a state of perfect, heavy balance. There was no hurry. The sun rose, the shadows lengthened, and the seasons turned with the slow grace of a great wheel. Now, let the centuries drift by like slow-moving clouds. Around the year 500 BCE, a new sound enters the forest. It is the sound of an axe, slow, rhythmic, and purposeful. These are the Boii, a Celtic people of immense craftsmanship and quiet spirit. They have come across the mountains seeking a sanctuary. Visualize their arrival. They do not come as a thundering army, but as a slow procession of wooden wagons with iron-rimmed wheels. They see the basin, protected by its mountain walls, and they know they have found a home. They call this place Boiohemum, the home of the Boii. They build their homes on the hills, high above the river mists. These are the Oppida, fortified towns made of timber, stone, and earth. Imagine the largest of them, Zavist, sitting on a hill overlooking the confluence of the Vltava and the Berunka. From the walls of Zavist, the boy could look out over a sea of trees that stretched to the horizon. Think of the life of a Celtic craftsman in the Bohemian autumn. The air is turning crisp. The sky is a pale, brilliant blue. Inside the wooden hall, a fire of oak logs crackles in the hearth. The craftsman is working with gold, the Bohemian gold panned from the riverbeds. He is hammering a torque, a heavy neck ring, twisting the metal into intricate spirals that have no beginning and no end. The sound of the hammer is hypnotic, clink, clink, clink. It is the heartbeat of the early Iron Age. The Boii were masters of the earth's secrets. They found the red garnets in the hills and polished them until they glowed like embers. They made glass of deep cobalt blue. They traded these treasures with people from the far south, with the Greeks and the Romans, who spoke in hushed tones of the wealthy Boii in their mountain fortress. But even with their wealth, the Boii lived in a world of deep mystery. They believed that every spring, every ancient tree, and every mountain peak was the home of a deity. Imagine a Celtic priest, a druid, walking into a grove of white birches at midnight. The moon is full, casting long, skeletal shadows on the snow. He does not speak. He listens. He listens to the wind in the branches, believing it to be the voice of the land itself. The Celtic era was a time of deep connection. There was no division between the person and the forest. When they ploughed the fields, they asked the earth for permission. When they hunted the stag, they thanked the spirit of the woods. This sense of belonging is the first layer of the Bohemian soul, a quiet, stubborn resilience that is tied directly to the soil. As the centuries continue to pass, the Roman Empire rises to the south. The legions of Rome march across the Alps, but they stop at the Danube. They look north toward the Bohemian mountains and see a wall of dark wood and mist. To the Romans, Bohemia was Hercynia Silva, the Hercynian forest, a place of myth where unicorns lived and where the trees were so tall they touched the sky. The Romans stayed away, and so Bohemia remained a hidden garden, a secret world. But the Boii eventually began to move on, drifting toward the west and south, leaving their names on the land forever. As they departed, the forest began to reclaim their hill forts. The wooden walls rotted into the earth, the stone hearths grew over with moss, and the home of the Boii fell into a long, centuries-long sleep. Imagine this period of the Great Silence. For a few hundred years there were very few people in the basin. The Vltava flowed on, indifferent to the rise and fall of tribes. The bison and the wolves returned to the valleys where the Celtic towns had once been. The land was resting. It was breathing deeply, regenerating its strength for the next great chapter. In the winter, the silence was absolute. Imagine standing in the center of the Bohemian plain in the year 300 AD. The snow is 4 feet deep. There is no sound of a bird, no sound of a car, no sound of a voice. There is only the sound of your own breath and the occasional crack of a frozen branch in the distance. The stars above are impossibly bright, like diamonds scattered on black velvet. This is the peace of ancient Bohemia. It is a peace that still exists today, deep beneath the surface of the modern world. Now let the light change. The sun begins to rise on a new era. In the 6th century, the silence is broken once again. From the east, across the vast plains of what is now Poland and Ukraine, a new people are moving. They move slowly, following the river valleys, bringing their families, their cattle, and their seeds. These are the Slavs. Unlike the Celts, who built their homes on the high, windy hills, the Slavs love the lowlands. They love the soft, damp earth near the rivers. They are a people of the valley. Imagine the legendary Father Czech. Whether he was one man or a symbol of 1,000 families, the image is the same. A man in a linen tunic with long hair and a steady gaze, standing at the base of Mount Jeep. Mount Jeep is a strange mountain, a solitary, rounded hill that rises out of the flat plain like a loaf of bread. Imagine the effort of the climb. Father Czech leads his people up the slope. The grass is tall and filled with wildflowers, blue cornflowers, red poppies, and white daisies. When they reach the top, the people stop. They catch their breath. They look out. From the top of Jeep, you can see the whole heart of Bohemia. Father Czech turns to his people and speaks. His voice is calm, filled with the exhaustion of the journey, but the joy of the arrival. "This is the land," he says. "A land of milk and honey. A land where the birds are plenty and the water is sweet. Here we shall stay. Here we shall name the land after ourselves." The people begin to descend. They find the spots where the soil is easiest to turn. They build circular villages called Okroulice. Imagine a circle of small thatched roof huts, all facing inward toward a central green where the livestock are kept at night. This shape, the circle, is a symbol of their unity. They are a community. They plant the linden tree in the center of their villages. The linden, the leaper. As you fall deeper towards sleep, imagine the scent of the linden tree in bloom. It is the most beautiful scent in the world, honey sweet, heavy, and intoxicating. To the Slavs, the linden was a holy tree, the home of the goddess of love. They believed that the linden tree would protect them from lightning, and that its tea would cure all fevers. The life of these early Slavs was dictated by the rhythm of the earth. In the spring, they celebrated the drowning of Marana, the goddess of winter. They would make a straw effigy of the cold and the dark and throw it into the river, watching it float away as the first green shoots of wheat appeared in the fields. In the summer, they jumped over bonfires to celebrate the solstice, their laughter echoing across the hills. This was a time of small history, not the history of great wars or gold-crowned kings, but the history of the hearth, the smell of baking bread, the sound of a mother singing a lullaby to her child in a dark hut, the feeling of the sun on your back as you work the field. These are the memories that are baked into the very soil of Bohemia. As you drift off, imagine the Vltava River flowing past these early Slavic villages. The water is dark and deep, carrying the reflections of the campfires. The land is no longer a wilderness, it is a home. The foundations have been laid. The spirit of the land, the combination of the Celtic mystery and the Slavic warmth, is beginning to form. The stars over Mount Jeep are the same stars that watch over you now. The silence of the Hercynian forest is the same silence that is growing in your room. You are safe. You are part of the long, slow story of this land. As the echoes of Father Czech's arrival fade into the rustle of the linden leaves, the land begins to settle into a deeper, more structured rhythm. The villages are no longer isolated islands in a green sea. They are becoming connected. Imagine the first footpaths being worn into the earth. These paths follow the natural contours of the hills, winding like ribbons through the high grass. They are the first threads of a web that will eventually hold a nation together. The sun begins to set on the era of the early tribes, and a golden amber light falls upon the figures of legend. We must return to the high crags of Vyšehrad, the high castle. In your mind, see the cliff of dark, jagged stone rising sharply above the Vltava. The river here is wide and slow, its surface acting as a mirror for the passing clouds. On top of this cliff sits a wooden hall built of massive oak logs, smelling of smoke and ancient beeswax. This is the home of Libusche. In the quiet of your thoughts, imagine her presence. She is the youngest of 3 sisters, but she possesses a stillness that the others do not. While her sisters, Kazi and Tita, look to the plants of the earth and the spirits of the air, Le Boucher looks into the flow of time itself. She is the mother of Bohemia. Picture her standing at the edge of the precipice at twilight. The wind pulls gently at her white linen robes. She is not looking at the river, but past it, into a future that does not yet exist. She raises her hand, and the birds in the nearby trees go silent. She speaks, and her voice is like the low vibration of a bronze bell. I see a city whose glory will touch the stars. Imagine the people gathered behind her, the farmers with their rough hands, the weavers with their tired eyes. They look out over the valley toward the north, where a thick forest of hazel and oak grows. Le Boucher tells them to go there to find a man preparing a threshold for his house. She explains that even as great lords bow their heads to enter a humble doorway, so shall the world bow to this city. In your mind, walk with the messengers through the dense thicket. The air is cool under the trees. You hear the rhythmic clack-clack of a stone mallet. You find a man working with wood, carving the base of a door. This is the Prague, the threshold. And as the first stones of Prague are placed, imagine the city rising not out of ambition, but out of a vision of peace. But the land still needs a heart, a masculine strength, to balance Le Boucher's feminine wisdom. The story of Přemyslid the ploughman is the story of the Bohemian soul's connection to the soil. Imagine the messengers traveling to the village of Stadis. They find a man behind two massive black oxen. The oxen move with a heavy, hypnotic gait, their breath huffing in the morning air like small clouds of steam. Přemyslid is a man of the earth. When he is told he is to be prince, he does not drop his plough in excitement. He finishes his row. He respects the work. He turns his oxen loose, and legend says they vanish into a nearby mountain, returning to the earth from which they came. He takes his simple willow staff and strikes it into the furrow. Focus on that staff. Imagine it taking root. In the span of a few breaths, leaves begin to unfurl. Bright, vibrant green. Nuts begin to grow. This is the symbol of the Přemyslid dynasty, a line of kings that grew directly from the dirt of the fields, rooted in the very labor of the people they would rule. As Le Boucher and Přemyslid unite, the wooden halls of Prague begin to expand. Imagine the first winter in the new castle. The snow falls in large, wet flakes, muffling the sound of the world. Inside the longhouse, the fire is the center of the universe. The walls are hung with furs, wolf, bear, and fox. The people sit on benches, their shadows dancing on the timber walls as the storytellers begin their work. They tell stories of the Iron Men to the west and the Golden Cities to the east, but they always return to the safety of the Bohemian Basin. They feel protected. To the north are the mountains of the giant Krkonoš, a spirit of the peaks who controls the weather. Imagine Krkonoš as a towering figure of mist and stone, watching over the border, ensuring that the peace of the valley remains undisturbed. Now, let the image of the wooden castle transform. The era of wood is slowly giving way to the era of stone. Imagine the first white milestone being quarried from the hills. It is soft when first cut, but hardens when it breathes the air. This stone is the color of bone, the color of the moon. As the first small rotundas, circular churches, are built, they look like white pearls scattered in the green forest. One of these pearls is built by a young prince named Václav, the man the world would come to know as Good King Wenceslas. Imagine Václav in the dead of winter. The year is perhaps 925. The moon is a silver sliver over the Ore Mountains. The ground is frozen solid, a crust of ice over the sleeping earth. While the rest of the castle sleeps, Václav rises. He carries a heavy sack of grain and wood on his back. He is not wearing the fine silks of a prince, but the simple wool of a servant. Visualize his footsteps in the snow. His servant, Podivin, follows behind him, shivering in the biting cold. Podivin finds that the snow is too deep, the ice too sharp. He begins to falter. Václav turns and tells him, "Step in my footprints." As Podivin places his feet into the imprints left by the prince, he feels a miraculous warmth. It is as if the heat of the earth itself is rising through Václav's steps. This is the heat of Bohemia, a quiet, internal fire that survives the harshest winters. This image of the prince and the servant moving through the white silence of the forest is the quintessential image of early Bohemian history. It is a story of heavy burdens shared, of warmth found in the coldest places, and of a leadership that looks downward to the needs of the poor rather than upward to the pride of the crown. Václav's life ends in tragedy at the gates of a church in Stara Boleslav, at the hands of his brother Boleslav the Cruel. But in the logic of sleep and legend, death is just another transition. Václav becomes the eternal prince. He does not truly leave. He goes to sleep. Imagine, deep beneath the Blanik mountain, a vast hall of stone. There, Wenceslas and his knights sit at a great table, their heads resting on their arms, their swords leaning against the rock. They are in a state of deep, magical hibernation. They are waiting. They are the reserve energy of the nation. It is said that when Bohemia is at its darkest hour, the mountain will open and the knights will ride out to restore the peace. Listen to the silence of Blanik Mountain. It is a heavy, tectonic silence. It is the sound of the earth breathing. As we reach the end of this first great section, the map of Bohemia is fully drawn. The mountains are the walls. The Vltava is the silver floor. Prague is the threshold, and the people are the keepers of the fire. The land has passed from the ancient Celts to the mystical Slavs, and from the tribal chiefs to the first saint kings. The air is getting heavier now. The mists of the Vltava are rising higher, obscuring the castle towers and the forest floor. The history of the land is not a series of dates, but a series of sensations. The smell of the linden, the coldness of the river, the warmth of Wenceslas's footprint, and the enduring strength of the mountain stone. You are a traveler in this landscape. You are walking through the high grass of the 10th century, and the sun is finally setting. The work of the day is done, the plough is put away. The fire is a bed of glowing embers. The whole history of Bohemia is a long, slow lullaby, and you are finally ready to listen to its deepest chords. Allow the mists of the early medieval forests to part. The wooden palisades and the simple huts of the early Přemyslids begin to dissolve into the background of memory. In their place, a new sound begins to echo through the Bohemian basin. It is the rhythmic, melodic clink of the mason's chisel against cold stone. The air smells no longer just of pine and wood smoke, but of wet mortar, crushed lime, and the damp, cool scent of the cathedral floor. We have arrived in the mid-1300s. Imagine a man sitting in a high room within the Hradčany castle, looking out over a city that is rapidly outgrowing its skin. This is Charles IV, the King of Bohemia and the Holy Roman Emperor. But in his heart, he is the architect of the soul. He does not look at Bohemia as a territory to be conquered, but as a garden to be tended, a jewel to be polished until it reflects the light of the heavens. Charles is a man of quiet, scholarly intensity. Imagine him dressed in heavy robes of deep crimson velvet, lined with the soft white fur of the ermine. He moves through the drafty corridors of the castle, not with the heavy tread of a warrior, but with the soft, deliberate steps of a monk. He speaks 5 languages, but he listens to the language of the stone. He has seen the great cities of Paris and Rome, but he knows that the Vltava is the true center of the world. Visualize his greatest vision, the Charles Bridge. Before this moment, there was the Judith Bridge, but it was swept away by the angry spring floods of the Vltava. Charles knows that to unite the city, he must build something that can withstand the weight of time itself. He calls upon his court astrologers and numerologists. They wait for a moment when the stars are in perfect alignment. The date is set, July the 9th, 1357, at exactly 5:31 in the morning. In your mind, stand on the muddy banks of the river in that pre-dawn chill. The sky is a pale, bruised purple. The river is a dark, swirling mass of silver. At the precise moment, 1357, 9/7, 5:31, Charles himself lays the first foundation stone. The numbers form a palindrome, a mathematical bridge that ascends and descends. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 7, 5, 3, 1. It is a bridge built on the logic of the universe. Imagine the construction. Thousands of eggs are brought from the countryside, their whites mixed into the mortar to give the stone an unbreakable strength. Feel the texture of the sandstone, rough, warm, and porous. The bridge begins to stretch across the water like the spine of a sleeping dragon. It is wide enough for 2 carriages lined with the silence of the river mist. As you walk across this bridge in your mind, the sounds of the city are muffled. There is only the rhythmic slap-slap of the water against the stone piers and the distant tolling of a bell. Now look up toward the castle hill. The sky is dominated by the rising skeleton of St. Vitus Cathedral. Charles has brought a young master builder from the west, Matthias of Arras, and later, the brilliant Peter Parler. Imagine Peter Parler standing amidst a forest of scaffolding. He is a man who thinks in geometry and light. He is carving the flying buttresses, the stone ribs that reach out from the walls like the wings of angels, holding the weight of the roof so that the walls can be made of glass. Visualize the interior of the cathedral. It is a space of vertical infinity. The air is cool and smells of frankincense and old dust. The light does not simply enter this building, it is transformed. It passes through the stained glass, turning into pools of liquid sapphire, ruby, and emerald on the grey stone floor. As the sun moves across the sky, these colors dance slowly across the tombs of the kings, a silent, colorful clock ticking through the centuries. Charles IV wants Prague to be more than a capital. He wants it to be a new Jerusalem. He founds the university, the first in Central Europe. Imagine the scholars in their black gowns walking through the cloisters of the Carolinum. They are debating the nature of the stars, the laws of medicine, and the music of the spheres. The city is a hive of intellectual energy, but it is a quiet, focused energy. It is the sound of quills scratching on parchment, the rustle of heavy, leather-bound books, and the hushed whispers of students in the library. Beneath this intellectual splendor, the new town of Prague is being laid out. Unlike the cramped, winding alleys of the old town, the new town is built with wide squares and straight lines. Charles walks the perimeter himself, measuring the walls. He ordains that the blacksmiths and the brewers, the weavers and the tanners, shall all have their place. Think of the horse market, which will one day be Wenceslas Square. In the 14th century, it is a vast, open space filled with the smell of hay and the sound of horses whinnying in the twilight. The city is breathing. It is expanding. It is becoming the Golden City, not because it is made of gold, but because of the warm, honey-colored light that reflects off the sandstone walls at sunset. As the reign of Charles IV reaches its twilight, he retreats to his private sanctuary, Karlstein Castle. Imagine Karlstein tucked away in a hidden valley surrounded by 5 hills. It is a fortress designed to hold the crown jewels and the sacred relics of the empire. To reach the heart of the castle, one must climb the great tower and enter the chapel of the Holy Cross. Visualize this room. It is the most sacred space in Bohemia. The walls are not painted. They are encrusted with thousands of semi-precious stones, amethysts, jaspers, and agates, set in gilded mortar. The ceiling is covered in gold leaf and glass lenses that reflect the candlelight, making it look like a celestial sky. There is no sound here. The walls are thick, the windows are small, and the silence is absolute. It is a room built for prayer, for meditation, and for the heavy responsibility of a crown. Charles sits in this golden silence, knowing that he has transformed the land. He has given Bohemia a heart of stone and a soul of light. The Vltava flows beneath his bridge. The cathedral reaches for his stars, and the university keeps his fire alive. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine the Golden Age as a long, warm afternoon. The shadows are long and graceful, The bells of the city are ringing the Angelus, a slow, deep resonance that vibrates in your chest. The stone of Prague is cooling after a long day of sun. The era of Charles IV is a period of peak balance, a time when the physical world and the spiritual world were held in a perfect Gothic embrace. The king is old now. He prepares for his final journey. He is buried in the crypt of the cathedral he built, beneath the weight of the Bohemian earth he loved. But the city remains. The bridge remains. The stone heart of Bohemia continues to beat, steady and slow, under the watch of the stars. As the golden sunset of Charles IV's reign fades, the atmosphere of Bohemia shifts. The air becomes crisper, filled with the scent of old parchment and the sharp metallic tang of the printing press. We enter a time of deep questioning and spiritual intensity. Imagine the Bethlehem Chapel in the heart of Prague's old town. Unlike the soaring, ornate heights of the cathedral, this chapel is simple, white, and vast. It is a space designed for the voice. Visualize Jan Hus standing in the pulpit. He does not speak in the distant Latin of the elites, but in the warm, melodic tones of the Czech language, the language of the farmers, the smiths, and the mothers. His voice is a steady flame in a dark room. He speaks of truth, of simplicity, and of the inner light. As you listen to the imagined echo of his words, feel the resolve of the Bohemian people. This was a time when the spirit of the land became fiercely independent. The Hussite era was not just a time of conflict, it was a time of communal strength. Imagine the Taborites building their new city on a hill, naming it Tabor. They lived as equals, sharing their bread and their gold in large wooden barrels in the town square. This is the Bohemian spirit, a stubborn insistence on one's own truth, a quiet defiance that prefers the simplicity of the heart to the weight of a golden crown. Now, let the fires of the Hussite wars grow dim, replaced by the cool blue moonlight of the late Renaissance. We move forward into the year 1576. A new figure takes the throne in Prague Castle, Rudolf II. Rudolf is perhaps the most mysterious ruler in European history. He is a man who fears the noise of the world and the clatter of politics. He retreats into the high, silent chambers of the Hradčany, surrounding himself not with generals, but with astronomers, painters, and alchemists. Imagine the Golden Lane at the castle, a row of tiny, colorful houses tucked into the fortifications. In the blue hour of twilight, smoke curls from the chimneys of these houses. Inside, the alchemists are at work. Listen to the sounds of their laboratories, the bubbling of glass retorts, the gentle hiss of a bellows, and the clinking of brass instruments. They are searching for the philosopher's stone, yes, but they are also searching for the secret language of nature. The air in Rudolphine Prague is thick with wonder. Imagine the emperor's cabinet of curiosities. It is a labyrinth of rooms filled with things that defy explanation. Clockwork birds that sing, preserved creatures from distant oceans, maps of stars that haven't been named yet, and paintings by Archimboldo where faces are made of fruit and flowers. Rudolf brings the great astronomers Johannes Kepler and Tycho Brahe to the city. Imagine Tycho Brahe on his observatory balcony, his silver prosthetic nose gleaming in the starlight. He is measuring the positions of the planets with a massive brass sextant. Beside him, the young Kepler is calculating the elliptical orbits of the heavens. They are realizing in the silence of the Prague night that the universe is not a series of perfect circles, but a complex, beautiful dance of geometry. The city itself becomes an alchemical laboratory. The streets of the Jewish quarter, the Yosifov, are narrow and winding, filled with the shadows of scholars like Rabbi Low. Legend tells of the golem, a creature of clay brought to life by a word placed in its mouth, designed to protect the people in silence. Visualize the golem not as a monster, but as a silent guardian, a physical manifestation of the Earth's own protection. This is the magic Prague. It is a city of layers, where the physical world feels thin, and something older and more profound shines through the cracks. The Vltava flows beneath the Charles Bridge, but now its waters reflect the glow of laboratory fires and the lanterns of late-night scholars. As the 16th century draws to a close, the atmosphere becomes heavy once again. The 30 Years' War looms on the horizon, a storm gathering in the mountains. But for now, in this moment of the script, we stay in the quiet study of Rudolf II. We watch the dust motes dance in a shaft of afternoon light hitting a velvet curtain. We feel the weight of the heavy, leather-bound books. The history of Bohemia is moving from the strength of stone to the complexity of the mind. It is becoming a land of dreams, of art, and of the tireless search for truth. The linden trees in the royal gardens are heavy with leaves, casting long, cool shadows over the stone fountains. The flickering candles of Rudolf's alchemical labs are snuffed out by the winds of the 17th century. We enter a period of profound transformation, the Baroque. If the Gothic era was the bone and stone of Bohemia, the Baroque is its velvet and gold. Imagine a winter night in the Mala Strana, the lesser town beneath the castle. The cobblestones are slick with a thin layer of ice, reflecting the yellow glow of oil lamps. The air is heavy with the scent of incense and damp wool. This is the era of the Counter-Reformation, a time when the silence of the Bohemian soul was channeled into breathtaking beauty. Visualize the Church of St. Nicholas. As you step inside, the world of the street disappears. Above you, the ceiling opens up into a painted heaven, where clouds and angels swirl in an eternal golden afternoon. The pillars are made of pink and green marble, smooth and cold to the touch. Listen to the silence of the Baroque. It is a theatrical silence. It is the sound of a single drop of water falling from a gargoyle into a stone basin. During this time, the darkness, the temno, fell over the Czech language as it retreated from the cities into the small thatched cottages of the countryside. But the spirit did not die. It went into hibernation. It lived in the folk songs hummed by mothers over wooden cradles. It lived in the intricate embroidery of traditional costumes, where every stitch was a secret map of the land. Imagine a rural manor in the foothills of the giant mountains. The snow is piled high against the windows, sealing the family inside. By the light of a single hearth, a grandmother tells the old stories of the Boii and the Přemyslids. The language is kept alive like a small, precious coal, carried from an old fire to a new one. This is the resilience of Bohemia, the ability to wait, to breathe slowly, and to survive in the shadows. Now let the heavy Baroque curtains be drawn back. The 19th century arrives with the scent of spring rain and the sound of a distant orchestra. This is the national revival. The language is waking up. Imagine the National Theatre in Prague standing proudly on the banks of the Vltava. It was built with the pennies of the poor, miners, farmers and maids who gave what little they had so that their culture could have a home of stone. Focus on the music of Bedřich Smetana. Close your eyes and hear the first notes of Má vlast, my homeland, specifically the movement called Vltava. The music begins with two flutes, light and swirling, representing the two springs of the river in the Šumava forest. One is cold, one is warm. They dance around each other, merging into a steady, pulsing rhythm. As the river grows, the cellos and violins join in, creating a sweeping melody that captures the curve of the valley. In your mind, follow the music as the river passes a village wedding. Hear the rhythmic stomping of boots and the cheerful cry of the clarinets. Then, the music turns dark and mysterious as the river flows through the St. John's Rapids. The water crashes against the rocks, white foam flying into the moonlight. Finally, the river reaches Prague. The music swells into a triumphant golden theme as the Vltava flows beneath the Charles Bridge, passing the Vyšehrad Rock, where Libuš once stood. The river is the history of the land made into sound. It is a song that never ends, a loop of water and memory. The 20th century passes over Bohemia like a series of long, contrasting shadows. There is the brief, bright morning of the First Republic, with its Art Nouveau cafes and the smell of roasted coffee and fresh newspapers. Imagine the municipal house, with its stained glass domes and mosaics, that look like frozen dreams. Then come the years of grey silence, the years of the Iron Curtain. But even then, the Bohemian soul remained intact. It lived in the underground, in the whispered poetry and the secret concerts held in living rooms. It culminated in the most peaceful revolution in history, a revolution that began with candles and flowers. Visualize Wenceslas Square filled with hundreds of thousands of people, not shouting, but jingling their keys. The sound is like a million tiny bells, a silver rain that washed away the old world and brought back the light. Today, Bohemia has returned to its natural state, a bridge between the East and the West, a sanctuary of culture and nature. But the true history of Bohemia is not found in the textbooks, it is found in the stillness. As this script comes to a close, imagine yourself leaving the city. You travel back toward the mountains, toward the heart of the forest where the story began. The sounds of the tram cars and the tourists fade away. You are back among the ancient oaks and the dark pines. The sun is setting over the Šumava. The sky is a deep, velvety indigo. The Vltava is a dark ribbon at your feet, its voice a low, comforting mumble. The mountains stand where they have always stood, guarding the basin. The Boii are here in the names of the hills. The Slavs are here in the scent of the linden trees. Charles IV is here in the curve of the stones, and you are here at the end of the long journey. The history of Bohemia is a circle. It is a threshold that you have crossed. It is a bed of moss in a silent forest. It is the warmth of a footprint in the snow. Let the centuries fold into one another. The 10th century, the 14th, the 20th, they are all just layers of a single long dream. The land is at peace, the river is at peace, and now you are at peace. The whole history of Bohemia is nothing more than a long, slow breath out. Sleep now. The mountains are watching. The river flows on. The story is complete. To understand the whole history of Bohemia, one must look away from the stone spires of Prague and toward the dark, rolling hills of the countryside. While kings were crowned and empires rose and fell, the vast majority of Bohemian history happened in the rhythm of the soil. Imagine a small village tucked into the folds of the central Bohemian uplands. The houses are whitewashed, with wooden beams darkened by age and smoke. Close your eyes and feel the transition of the Bohemian winter. In the countryside, winter is not just a season, it is a profound transformation. The snow begins as a soft dusting on the black branches of the cherry trees. Then it deepens. It blankets the fields of hops and wheat until the world is a featureless white void. In the 18th century, these winters lasted for months. The village became an island. Imagine the sound of the feather-plucking nights, drani pezi. In the warmth of a farmhouse kitchen, the women of the village gather around a long wooden table. The air is thick with the smell of roasted chicory and wood smoke. Their hands move in a rhythmic, hypnotic motion, stripping the soft down from goose feathers to fill the heavy duvets that will keep the family warm. As they work, they do not speak of the wars in the south or the taxes of the emperor. They tell the old stories. They tell of the hedgekal, the forest spirit whose wild cry echoes through the frozen pines, leading lost travelers in circles. They tell of the klekanice, the twilight spirit who wanders the village paths as the church bell tolls the evening prayer. These stories are the psychological landscape of Bohemia. They are the ways the people made sense of the vast, terrifying silence of the winter nights. As you listen to the scratching of the feathers and the crackle of the fire, feel the deep, heavy safety of the indoors. The snow may be 6 feet deep outside the door, but the hearth is the sun of this small universe. Now, let the frost begin to melt. Imagine the Bohemian spring. It begins with the sound of cracking ice on the local ponds. The Vltava and the Lab rivers swell with the blue meltwater from the giant mountains. This is the season of the burning of the witches, Charodziejnic. On the last night of April, imagine the hillsides of Bohemia alight with thousands of bonfires. The smoke rises into the cool night air, a symbolic cleansing of the old year. The air smells of wet earth and the first blossoms of the apple orchards. In the village of South Bohemia, where the land is dotted with thousands of man-made fish ponds built by the Rosenberg lords, the water begins to shimmer with new life. These ponds are like mirrors laid onto the green fields. Imagine the reflection of the clouds in the still water of the Rosenberg pond, the largest of them all. This is a landscape shaped by human hands over 500 years, yet it feels as natural as the mountains. As the heat of the Bohemian summer arrives, the land turns gold. Imagine the endless fields of hops in the Gothic region. The hops grow on tall wires, forming green cathedrals that stretch toward the sky. The scent is bitter and herbal, the very smell of the Bohemian summer afternoon. This is the time of the harvest. The sun is hot on the back of your neck, but the forest is always nearby, offering a cool, mossy sanctuary. In the heat of July, the people go into the woods to hunt for Bohemian gold, the mushrooms. Imagine the silence of a pine grove at noon. The ground is a soft carpet of brown needles. You move slowly, your eyes scanning the moss. You find a grzyb, a porcini, its cap brown and smooth like a fresh loaf of bread. This tradition of mushroom hunting is a national meditation. It is a slow, quiet walk through the history of the trees, a way of connecting with the earth that has not changed since the time of the Celts. Finally, the Bohemian autumn descends. The linden trees turn a brilliant fiery yellow. The morning mists linger longer in the valleys, clinging to the towers of lonely castles like Karlstein or Krivoklat. This is the season of the harvesting of the ponds. Imagine the fishermen in their heavy rubber boots, pulling the great nets through the shallow waters. The silver carp leap in the air, catching the pale autumn sun. It is a ritual of abundance, a preparation for the long sleep to come. The cycle of the seasons is the true clock of Bohemia. It is a clock that does not tick in seconds, but in the blooming of the linden, the ripening of the hops, and the freezing of the river. As you drift deeper into sleep, let these 4 seasons blend into one. Feel the coolness of the spring mist, the warmth of the summer sun, the crispness of the autumn air, and the absolute silence of the winter snow. You are no longer watching history, you are breathing it. You are a part of the cycle. The land of Bohemia is a cradle that has rocked 100 generations to sleep, and now it rocks you. The history of the world is loud, but the history of the land is quiet. Listen to the quiet. It is the sound of the roots growing beneath the soil. It is the sound of the Vltava moving toward the sea. It is the sound of Bohemia, resting, waiting, and eternal.